We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network, continuing our conversation with Liberty Nation senior political analyst Tim Donner. Tim, so we've just been talking about almost the energy that Donald Trump's been bringing to the presidency the second time around. And there's a little clip I want to play for you from the inauguration speech. And if you could just give me your feedback on that, what you think about it, and how you think it landed, really, for the American people. I'll play that for you now.
My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Well, Mark, I think that this is really sort of frames the argument that Trump has been making, which is we have so much to do and so little time to correct what's happened over the last 4 years. And that's why I think his speech was so down to business and not soaring rhetoric and grand promises of restoring this and that. He has a specific agenda. It's remarkably bold, and it's going to take his attention 24/7, 365. And he's really the only one who could pull off this ambitious an agenda because, Mark, he's not like you and me. He's not like everybody we know. He's not like anybody else we've ever seen. He's a force of nature who has forged a comeback unlike any in American political history from really the scrap heap on January 6, 2021, back to the presidency, something really nobody, maybe even Trump, could have envisioned. And I think a turning point for him was Butler, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And even he, whose real beliefs, faith beliefs, we don't know for sure, even he had to look at the fact of the fortuitous turn of the head at exactly the right moment.
I've got a clip on that, Tim, that I'll just play for everybody.
Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Well, you see, even he could hardly deny that there was a reason behind all of this. And most of us watching, and I happen to be a person of deep faith, but even those who aren't, had to look at that and say, not only did he probably win the election right there when he got up and said, fight, 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 and how seemingly impossible it was that he turned his head at just the right moment, had to look at it and say, there's something larger happening here, something beyond our own control or comprehension. And I think that gave him an even higher level of commitment, but also a sense of destiny, that he was destined to return to the White House, however impossible it might have been. And I think the biggest difference this time, Mark, is that he is not seeking re-election. In other words, you go in the first term, and even someone as blunt and bombastic as Trump would say to himself, well, I've got to be careful here because I want 8 years, not 4. And you have to do things to position yourself for re-election. That's all gone for him now. It's 1 term and 1 term only left, which means he's going to do everything that he wants, and he's not going to pay attention to the sniping, harping critics, who are still bitter about his one-sided election victory. I mean, he's a man on a mission, to say the least, and that mission is so broad and wide that thinking about covering it, Mark, for 4 years is already making me exhausted.
There's actually, let's talk about the breadth of that vision at the moment. So, for my sins, I spend time on social media because I've got to check the things.
Because you're forced to, Mark, for journalistic purposes.
I have to. You know, I don't even tweet myself. I just look at the things. Well, unless something really sparks.
I'm guilty as charged too, by the way.
So what I've noticed is that you have there's almost, and they're not equal camps, but there's three camps. There's those who were already opposed to Trump, and they're just doubling down, saying, you know, the price of eggs hasn't changed. You were fooled, because, you know, the price of eggs.
And we didn't get a cessation of hostilities in Ukraine by the end of Inauguration Day. That's another lie by Trump.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to be the next impeachment, right? The next impeachment effort by
Yes,
them.
yes.
So that's one camp. Then you've got the other camp of those who are, they're all in for Trump no matter what. And it doesn't matter what. You know, he could say, you know what, we're going to, just to strengthen the First Amendment, we're going to get rid of the Second Amendment. And that group, and they're a very small group, would go along with it and say...
Well, it's like he said, and everybody attacked him for it, but it was true when he said I could fire shots down Fifth Avenue in New York and I wouldn't lose any of my supporters.
Yeah.
That borders on absolute truth.
Yeah. And then there's the third group who I think are the most considered group out there, that at least that I've seen on the internet, and they're sort of celebrating the things that they wanted. They're skeptical of the things that they didn't. And I don't really see that level of being able to pass the good from the bad in terms of what they want for their perfect 4-year term with Donald Trump in the White House. You don't really see that on the left, except for there was an almost tacit admission of something on the front page of Politico the day after Inauguration Day, the 21st. And it was, Trump's a great president, but now he has to learn to be a good one. And I thought that was a very, very good encapsulation of being able to look at things with an element of reason that's sorely missing from the extremes of both ends of the spectrum.
Well, I think that the election was also revealing, in another sense, this whole diversity, equity, inclusion agenda, the woke mindset, critical race theory, these things that metastasize after the death of George Floyd in 2020 and came to dominate Biden's term because he mostly embraced it. I think it was incredibly revealing that the most effective political ad during Trump's campaign was when the voiceover said, Trump's for you, Harris is for they, them, and showed a picture of a really rugged looking, shall we say, classical sort of transgender, purple hair, etc. And I think it gave people permission to say that they've never been comfortable with this, but were afraid to speak out. And I think that's sort of symbolic of the things that people decided why they voted for Trump. I mean, it looks like about 41%, according to a reasonable poll put out recently, 41% voted in favoring Trump, and 54% voted to reject the Biden-Harris administration. So, of course, Trump's going to take a solid mandate and turn it into an even broader one to do things that he wants to do that weren't necessarily high on the agenda of most American voters. But, I mean, you can break his promises into sort of three categories. One is immediate, things that'll get done right away. Ones that are plausible, that are more far-reaching, but it'll take a while to happen, and there's some uncertainty. And then there's the implausible, the things that seem almost impossible, that only Trump would embrace, such as changing the entire way the federal government does business through civil service reform, moving agencies, and these sort of things. Can one man in 4 years change the entire way that Washington has done business for a decade? I mean, that seems implausible. Only Trump would embrace that ambition. And I think everyone would agree only Trump could possibly achieve it.
He has a way of making the impossible possible, whether that's a good or a bad thing. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.